Revelation's greatest vision is Jesus Christ. That's really what we should be focused on. We see Jesus described in Revelation maybe more than any book throughout the Bible. Maybe we see him a better picture of him in any book outside of the Gospels. Let me qualify that maybe a little bit. He certainly speaks in Revelation more than he speaks in any book outside of the Gospels. So Revelation isn't a book that says, and we've been talking about this the past couple of weeks as I've been trying to lay out for you, that it doesn't say, its purpose is not to say, hey, Christians are superior and they win in the end, so therefore we can thumb our noses at everybody that's not a Christian. We're the victors and everybody else is going to get what is coming to them. That's how some people approach their end times dialogue. And some people will approach Revelation that way as well. There is certainly a victory described in Revelation. That's true. But I don't think that the whole purpose of it is for us to see what the victory is and so that we can be the victors and we can just suck it to those people that don't agree with us. And it's really only to the degree that we understand Jesus, that we love Jesus, that we make it all about him, that we really even get to participate in the victory to begin with. And so what we find is that it's not about us at all, but it's all a vertical relationship and it's all about him. By way of reminder, if you think I'm blowing smoke on this whole issue, the very first verse that we saw as we jumped into Revelation in verse 1 of chapter 1 is this, the revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave him to show his servants the things that must soon take place. So right from the outset, we're supposed to know this is a revelation of Jesus Christ. This isn't a revelation of the end times, although that's certainly talked about. This is a revelation of Jesus Christ. So we're supposed to be making much out of Jesus as we go through this letter. This whole story is Jesus' story. But it is so easy to get distracted when we get to this imagery. And in a few weeks, we're going to get into some really huge, explosive pictures and images. And it's going to be really exciting to try and dig into what all of that means, because it's all there in your face. But we've got to make sure that it's all about Jesus. Now, I admit over the last couple of weeks, I've harped a lot on doctrine. The last 2 weeks especially, I've harped a lot on doctrine, making sure that we have our doctrine right, making sure that we're not sliding, making sure that we're not accepting things, swallowing things that we shouldn't be swallowing, and not allowing any of our belief systems to be corrupted. And that could certainly come off, and I admit this, in terms of how I present it, that could certainly come off with this kind of fortress mentality that we have to keep the world out, we have to make sure that we stay pure, and basically when you boil it all down, that feels like a we're right and you're wrong kind of thing. And so that's why, even when we break apart these 7 letters, sometimes we kind of err a little bit and deal with them separately. We err a little bit because we want to get each letter's purpose down. But when you look at the 7 as a whole, of all of these letters to each one of these churches, what we see is the greater arc of Revelation's purpose presented. And it's presented in an arc that actually goes across all of time. And so we can see elements of each one of these churches present in the church global at different times within history. And it's led some people to say, see, a millennial doesn't exist. And so therefore, I'm getting ahead of myself. You don't even know what that means yet. We'll get there. All right, so the main focus, though, of this whole purpose of this letter is to inspire people who are facing persecution. To get back to that drum again, let's beat it some more. These are Christians in Asia Minor who were being confronted with an assault against their own message of grace and hope. And so because they were facing a frontal assault on what they believed, they were slipping from their zeal. They were compromising on lesser issues, and they were being distracted by the world around them. And so they needed to be brought back. They needed to get their attention back, that vertical attention back where it really matters. And so that's why Jesus gives them a personal, unique letter. Each one of these 7 churches gets a unique letter just for them so that they will pay attention to the rest of what's coming. And as you read these letters, hopefully you've seen, hey, there's pieces of us in this as well. And hopefully that grabs your attention. Jesus says, look, Ephesus, right off the bat, right? A church that we tend to think of as being one of those admirable ones that we want to follow and be just like. He says, Ephesus, you ain't all that. That's what we saw a few weeks back. You Pergamum, I mean, what are you doing? You're a mess. Thyatira? Don't even get me started. You're disaster going on there. So each one of these letters starts off differently. And with each description of who Jesus is, we get a different feel for Jesus' authority as he starts each one of these letters. Because the eyes of the people have been drawn down. They're not looking vertically. They've been drawn down to the world around them. It does the same thing for us, I think. We get distracted, whether it's legacy media or social media or some other kind of media. There's like 82 million types of media anymore. And we get our focus drawn down because my media is better than your media, and therefore, no, that isn't supposed to be our purpose, right? And all of them are saying, look at this over here, this is really bad, this is what's happening, and that's bad, isn't it? Agree with me that that's bad. And look at this, that's even worse over here, that's even worse than what was bad over there, agree with me, that's bad. And then our eyes get naturally drawn down because we're constantly being told this is bad, that's bad, or this is going on, or that's going on. Don't you want to defend this or defend that? And that's what's going on with all the noise all around us. And this whole letter is a call saying, yes, that's true, all of those things are going on around you, but your vertical relationship is still the one that matters. And so Jesus calls us back to look up again in each one of these letters. To look at a Jesus who cannot be managed in any way, shape, or form. A Jesus who cannot be trivialized away. A Jesus with power who isn't swayed or deterred by even the most explosively powerful threats that are going to come to humanity since the beginning of time. As we'll see those in a few weeks. And so when you meet him in chapter 1, his hair is white, depicting great wisdom, right? All those of you that have white hair, you can just tell us all afterwards how wise you are. Last week, we saw his eyes were flames, right? Indicating that he sees everything. And out of his mouth comes this fearsome two-edged sword that cuts soul and spirit, we talked about. The words that come out of his mouth have power and authority. His voice is greater than the sound of rushing waters we saw. A roaring cataract, his face is like the sun. All of these descriptions of who Jesus is. We're not supposed to just skate past those to get to the good stuff. Where's that dragon at anyways? See, this is supposed to inspire us. This is supposed to inspire a group of Christians that were very distracted by the world, that were facing conflict, that were facing persecution, that were saying that we're starting to drift and slide and compromise and go in a new direction. And so this is to lift our eyes and to encourage us. See, Jesus isn't just a man who died. This is the King of Kings and Lord of Lords with power to see all of history and move within it. In fact, not just to move within it, but ultimately to move it. And so that's the thing that we all need, not just Christians in the first century, but all of us need that in order to rise to any occasion that we're confronted with, to be encouraged in the way that we're living out our faith, to hold fast, to maintain our confession, to keep our eyes lifted up on what really matters. So you and I need to see Jesus Christ not as a failed Nazarene carpenter. That would be pretty depressing, although that tends to be how the humanistic perspective of Jesus is. He's not somebody that's frail and fragile, but somebody who's mighty, someone who's all-powerful, somebody who's going to ride a conquering white horse. That's way at the end. We'll get there in September. And break history. He's going to tame it all. He's in total charge over every bit of it. That's the forest we got to keep track of when we're talking about all the trees. And so we have another description today in verse 1 of our passage. And he says this, "And to the angel of the church in Sardis write, the words of him who has the 7 spirits of God and the 7 stars." These are the words of the one who is in unity with the Godhead. That's ultimately what that phrase means there at the end of that sentence. The 7 spirits. Now, I'm not going to go into great depth on this because I am going to unpack this when we get to chapter 4 because this comes up again. I do the work. Just for now, know what I mean by that, by the 7 spirits, is this is the Spirit's perfection. In other words, this is the Holy Spirit. 7 is the biblical terminology for completion and perfection and divine intervention. And so when we see 7 spirits and Jesus having them, this isn't 7 unique spirits. This is one Spirit who is complete and finished in every way, the perfection of the Holy Spirit. Again, I'll do the work when we get to chapter 4. Just trust me on it for now. You can come back. If I don't do the work on chapter 4, you can come back and say, you should. So Jesus has these 7 spirits. The perfect Holy Spirit is working ultimately with him, for his glory. Does that seem like it's a bit of a stretch? It's not, because that's exactly what John says when the Spirit of Jesus says this, John quotes him. When the Spirit of truth comes, he will guide you into all truth, verse 13. Verse 14, he says, he will glorify me. This whole exploration into all of truth is for one purpose, to glorify the Son. This is what the Holy Spirit does. So this is why Jesus says, I have the 7 spirits. This is a Jesus who really is in control. Who really is in control. He holds all truth. That's what that also means when you look at John chapter 16 there. Right? This is the Spirit of all truth, and I have him, so therefore I am in control of all truth. And that's what he holds. And then we also say the stars there, right, in verse 1. The stars we've already talked about. Those are the messengers to the churches, right? He gives us that definition back at the end of chapter. Wonder about that. This is the messengers, the angels to the churches, are the 7 stars. And we talked about the fact that once he holds a star, he never lets it go. They're his. Right? They are solidly his. And so Jesus has the complete picture of all that are his in his hand, right? 7 being perfection, completeness. Divine intervention. So this is the picture of Jesus Christ that we're given at the beginning of this letter to Sardis. And that's what you need to letter to Sardis. And that draw your eyes up, to get them off of your own feet. The whole book of Revelation, and this letter is no less than that, is designed to draw you up to an exalted Christ who cannot be defeated. And he will never, ever lose whatever comes to him. So this is what ultimately I think John the Baptist understood, the cousin of Jesus. He understood ultimately that all of life, everything that I've done up to this point is for one purpose, to glorify Jesus Christ, to glorify this one. Jesus said that John the Baptist is the greatest person to ever walk the earth. Really? Yeah, you can look that up. It's in Luke chapter 7. But even John the Baptist said, this joy of mine is now complete. He must increase, but he must increase, decrease. The greatest human being to ever walk the face of the earth other than Jesus Christ says he must increase, but I must decrease. I need to get my eyes off myself. I need to stop accepting any sort of praise or anything for my own sake. I can accept it when it points to Jesus, but for my own sake, I need to stop that. I need to glorify him. And the same is true for us. We must decrease. We must take our eyes off of ourselves. We must get our focus back on him, because we're ultimately not going to break through on our own without his help. You're not going to experience what he can do if all you're trying to do is manipulate the world around you. Whatever I can touch, whatever I can experience, I just try to manipulate that, try to get people to vote the way I vote and all those kinds of things. You've missed the whole point. The point is the vertical one. You've missed the whole point.